probably start recording and get this panel underway. Is everybody good?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, here we go. Let's see. Recording. Okay. So let's record. All right. So welcome to the panel on writing queer stories. So I am really excited to hear what everybody has to say about this topic today, which I found out today was supposed to be Pride in City if there wasn't a pandemic. So it feels appropriate that this is what we're doing today instead. All right. I'd like to go around and have y'all introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about why this panel is so important to you and what you write. And we'll start with going kind of clockwise from A and Mouse here, and then down to Diana, and then to Catherine.
Okay, so that means I'm first. My name's Mouse. Oh, we got our other attendee. Our other panelist is here.
Oh, yay! Yay.
Excellent. I will buy them some time.
Yeah, so you go ahead.
I'm Mouse. I use he, they, but I'm pretty impartial to what I'm called.
We cannot put them in our...
Oh, I can put it in, yeah, you're right, I can put it in my name.
Oh,
We can put it in our names.
There we go. Oh my goodness. There we go. Okay.
If I am being attacked by the cat. Diana is a genius. So I am an author. I tend to write a lot of fantasy novels. I specifically want to write novels for people who grew up reading about like exciting things that young people got to do, but now we're 30 and we're out of university and we don't get to go on adventures anymore. And I'm sick of it. So I want to write those kinds of books, and I tend to write books with a lot of queer characters in them, either because I am myself or because most of my friends are, and I want us to be able to have adventures again. So that is me.
all right. Well, Jackie, I know you had a little bit late to getting connected. We're so glad that you're here. So this is just introductions, and we're going kind of, we were going clockwise, but if you're not ready, we could go counterclockwise.
I am ready. I was just trying to make the Zoom, and now I'm here. I'm ready. So just like types of books or just general? All right. My name is Jackie Martini, and I am kind of on the younger end of a writer's journey, I guess I would say. I have a double bachelor's in English, creative writing, and literature, and I have my master's in creative writing as well. And most of what I write tends to be like adventure fiction, adventure fantasy. Like Mouse, I also tend to like the adventure aspect. I like the, the grand scale aspect. But I don't necessarily need all of my protagonists to be, 17 or 16 or whatever the going age is at the time. And yeah, my books are populated by, a wide variety of diverse characters. As far as, queer characters, which is obviously the panel topic, but I look to put that into the world, I guess, because there's just a shortage of those kinds of stories. So, yeah, that's me.
All right. Well, thanks. So Diana.
Me. Hi, I'm Diana, or Diana, however you want to call me, Pingisha. And I write mostly fantasy, and tends to be, my debut comes out December 1st. It's called The Curse of Roses, and it is YA historical fiction about these two girls meeting and falling in love to fight the erasure of all the queers through history, because we were there.
All right. Great intro. So Catherine.
Hi. Yeah, so I write speculative fiction in various niches. I enjoy fantasy, science fiction. I have few novels coming out soon. One is April 2021, and it's a dark fantasy romance called Lodestone. And then I have a science fiction novel called Curious Citizen that's coming out. The release date's to be announced, but it's in production right now. And I really enjoy writing diverse characters, including queer characters, and exploring worlds that may not resemble our world, but that can demonstrate the possibilities for queer characters and diverse characters in settings that may not have the same prejudices or sometimes similar, that parallel, but can be explored in different ways in different worlds and settings. A really cool opportunity to do that.
Yeah, great. And it is great to meet you all today. So I'd like to kind of start on a very happy note. So I'd love to know what you guys think are some stories that have told, or some books, or even, you know, even other media that have told your stories especially well. Like, what are your recs or your dues in telling queer stories? And we'll switch it up a little bit so we're not always starting with the same person. We'll go with Jackie and then move clockwise again.
Well, first I have to rec Mouse, actually, one of the panelists. Writes a lot of really excellent queer characters, queer relationships. Mouse has left the chat. Mouse has returned to the chat. Ace Layton also I know has published and is also working on some really excellent stuff, so I'm very excited for that. Outside of that, I would say some of the really well done queer characters and queer relationships I've seen have she-ra I say weirdly because of just the culture, I guess, but things like She-Ra and like Steven Universe, things that are, you know, quote unquote geared towards kids, or maybe are geared towards kid at first. But I see a lot of like positivity and just excitement coming out of shows like that. So those are my main recs. Yeah, just excellent stuff all around.
All right. So Deanna, do you have any?
She-Ra. So I binged the whole thing in like a weekend. It is amazing, and everyone should watch and let it heal you. Let it heal your heart. And I rewatched The Handmaid, which is a Korean movie by Park Chan-wook. He also did Old Boy and some other stuff, but it is a Korean retelling of Sarah Waters' The Fingersmith. And I highly encourage everyone to watch that movie because it is perfection. And also, I really enjoyed The Old Guard, where they had the gays just be in love for like 400 years and still be madly in love and like embarrass all the dudes with a confession when they were trapped. And what else have I seen? Well, and recently I've read like really good books, really nice queer books. You Should See Me in the Crown. I'm sure you guys have heard of the beauty modern fairy tale that is You Should See Me in the Crown. And I also really enjoyed Throwaway Girls by Andrea Contos. And in case anyone hasn't read it, Legendborn has a lot of queer rap and non-binary rap. And it is probably my favorite book I read all year. I've been like standing it hardcore since.
All right. So Catherine, what are your recommendations for us?
Well, there's I enjoy the classic Ursula K. Le Guin, Left Hand of Darkness, which has a lot of interesting gender and queer commentary, especially for the time when it was written. And right now I'm reading a book, and the author's name escapes me, but it's called Girl, Serpent, Thorn.
Oh, Melissa Bashadurst.
Yes, that's it. And
I think I'm saying her name right. Sorry, Melissa, if I'm not.
When I read it either, but but it's got some great, like I said, I haven't finished it, but so far it's got really good representation of it's a YA novel and for bisexual and just very great sapphic love story. Has a lot of commentaries as well. I recommend it.
Excellent. All right. So Mouse, you're up.
Jackie mentioned Ace Layton, and I just have to be like, hey, I know that guy. So Ken second that recommendation. I'm also gonna call out a member of our attendees here. Alexa Windsor writes some cozy mystery novels. They're murder mysteries, and everything is so casual and comfortable, and I really appreciate the way they do things. I'm going to mention Good Omens. Love some Good Omens. I have committed the cardinal sin of not reading it, but I watched it and I enjoyed it a lot. I am actually particularly weak to this question because I read so much nonfiction that I'm like, oh wait, who have I read recently? But I'm gonna stick with those for my top three. Anything by Ace Layton, anything by Alexa Windsor, Good Omens. Good Omens is only like 6 episodes. Everyone should watch it. It makes me happy.
Oh, great. Excellent. We all come away with lots of good things to read and watch. So now let's kind of move on to some of maybe the mistakes that we've seen when writers try to tell queer stories, particularly if they are not queer themselves or not part of the identity that they're depicting in this character. So let's move again clockwise, and let's start with Deanna.
So what have authors who are not queer? Fetishization? Fetishization? How do you say that?
You're
Can
saying
someone
it
help me?
Fetishization.
Fetishization? Is it fetishize? It's I or E?
I.
So this is what I get for knowing words from reading and not so much from talk. But yeah, there is a lot of, and I find it's mostly when it's cis straight women writing fiction, that there is a lot of weird straight gays going on there that immediately puts me off. And I cannot.
Mhm.
Also, don't kill your gays.
Yeah. Excellent.
Is it me next?
I think it's Catherine.
Going that way? Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of stereotypes and fetishization, like Dan said. I think using queer characters as comic relief can be a big problem, and also villainization. And I'm going to bring up some Disney characters here, just because they're really relatable to a lot of people, or they're famous. But Scar from The Lion King is a good example, and Hook from Peter Pan, of kind of making these villains more effeminate and very seeming queer in a kind of lens of them being off or being villainous, and that casts even subconsciously a negative light on queer people. And then with comic relief, like LeFou from Beauty and the Beast, it was kind of hinted like he fawns over Gaston and he's also more effeminate, and it's just this stereotype. And then he's used as comic relief a lot. And those are some very basic examples, but it just seems to be a trend and a negative stereotype that makes queer people seem other and lesser and belittled because they are serving a villainous or comic purpose instead of being treated like people.
Can I add pandering to my list? Because Catherine talking about LeFou just reminded me of the Star Wars lesbian kiss that was happening in the background.
Oh,
Oh, we have rap.
You said magic words. Jackie's gonna get heated now.
I'm driving to Hollywood as we speak at this point. No, sorry. I think we're out of order, so I don't know if I'm next or if Mouse is next.
I think Mouse is next, and then we'll
Me.
circle back.
So I'm gonna build a little bit off what Catherine said. It's not that your queers can't be funny, and it's not that your queers can't be villainous. It's that if your only queers are villains and they're only funny, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
And like Deanna mentioned, don't kill your gays. Don't kill your gays if they're the only gays. You don't have this problem if you have lots of gays. For me, really, it is authors who are not of those spheres of experience, having characters bring up experiences in ways that come off as trite or uncomfortable. It's less of a solid example and more of a stylistic one. Have someone read your work if it's not something you've experienced. Because a lot of those things really do come up in conversation, but they don't come up in conversation like that. So that's what I have to say.
All right. So you're up, Jackie.
And I kind of want to build actually off what Mouse has said, because it's very, I guess I see this in the lesbian kiss. I'm giving it significant bunny ears because I'm heated. But people who aren't from those spheres of experience and who haven't put in the research will just inevitably do things incorrectly and not even know that they're doing things incorrectly. Just jamming a kiss in for 2 seconds doesn't make sense to a reader or to a viewer, because there's no, it's kind of like it slaps you in the face. There's no groundwork there. There's no build up, and if you aren't of that experience and you're not willing to do the research and talk to people who are, queer, then you are inevitably going to miss build up, I think, that comes naturally if you've done the research because you know that it has to be there. A series that I missed shouting out, which there's a big love-hate relationship with it online, is the Captive Prince trilogy by C.S. Pacat. And some of it is done really well. I mean, the main characters they're gay and they're in a relationship, and a lot of it is done really well. But where a lot of people get rubbed the wrong way, I think, is that some of the, and there's other plot stuff too that kind of gets skipped, but there's a lot of necessary groundwork, I think, that just doesn't, people just assume that it's a one-to-one experience, that you can just say, oh, it's exactly the same if you're queer as if you were straight. And that's not always the case at all, obviously. So I agree, just a lack of attentiveness, not necessarily always a lack of care, but a lack of attentiveness can really tank your execution, even if you have the best of intentions.
It'd be like throwing a dirty joke. How do you know someone writing has not researched?
Right.
There's no lube.
Or it's just spit or something. It's just it's awful. I sit here, and part of it is that, I'm demisexual, so part of it is I'm already kind of like, oh, you better write this well or I'm not going to enjoy this at all. But as soon as that stuff happens, I'm like, no, you're wrong. This is not good. This is not good.
We could probably do a whole panel on people specifically writing that kind of content badly.
Yeah.
Probably. So there's a lot of good information from you guys. I'm hearing a lot of need for writers who are not queer or who are not of the queer identity that they are depicting to really do their research, to talk to other people, consult with members of the community, and not make assumptions.
And not just one, do more than one, because no one's experience is a monolith.
Absolutely. So how about for writers who are telling queer stories, and especially for queer writers telling queer stories, So this next question is just how do you handle pushback or queer phobia from your audience, and how best to protect yourself in those situations? So let's see. I think we will be starting with Catherine this time.
Okay. So as an author, my journey with writing my own experiences because of potential backlash has been a little wary. I mean, I have had to dip my toe into writing queer stories, even though I am queer. It's, I started just kind of writing in my own, bedroom, and just, when I was younger in middle school, just kind of keeping a secret from everyone. And then I started writing and showing friends and feeling a little more comfortable. And then I started publishing under a pen name, and kind of just hiding because of this fear of being judged for it, or just being labeled as like, oh, I'm a queer author. Like there's nothing else that I can write, and, to be kind of shoeboxed in. And so it's only been recently that I've been feeling confident enough in myself and in my skill as a writer to actually write and share my queer stories by submitting them officially as, for querying and getting them out there and under my name. So it's very, it's been a journey, and it's not always easy to tell own voices stories. It's not easy to own your own voice publicly in certain situations.
Yeah, absolutely. And that one step at a time approach is probably it's emotionally helpful. Right. So Mouse?
So I kind of went the opposite direction as Catherine. And when I started writing books for public consumption, I cranked on the gas and never looked back. I do use a pen name, which has become my de facto name. But when I go to conventions, I have a sign. We have a sign above our table that says queer books by queer authors or something like that. So my approach was the opposite. I took that box and I built a house in it. And there are fallbacks to that. There are issues that come along with it, the same issues that Catherine was probably wary of trying to struggle with. I've clashed with my editor before over issues of identity and the kind of representation in my books. I've clashed with people in my life over those same things. And I don't have a really good answer for how to deal with it. I'm able to stand up for my books because I believe in what I've written. My work definitely needs work, but it doesn't need work in that it needs to be less queer. That's not the part that needs the help. Over people in my personal life, a lot of it has been accepting people where they're at and adjusting my expectations of them accordingly. Once I know what someone thinks and what someone's feeling, they may or may not get involved in those conversations with me in the future because they might not be invited to. It's part setting healthy boundaries, part knowing where to take a stand, and those can be really hard things to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. Boundaries are very important for protecting yourself and just having that healthy social life. So, Jackie?
Yeah, as far as boundaries, I do just want to disclaim as well that, like, if you are somebody who wants to write these stories and for whatever reason you are in a place where your name cannot be attached to that work, maybe ever, or for a very long time, there's no shame in pen names for any reason, even if you just hate your name. And I just wanted to toss that out there because there is, there are situations where it's just not safe for you, and especially if you are queer yourself, or whatever your situation is, a pen name is always a valid thing to have. For me, I try to take it as an approach of if they are going to give me that kind of backlash, like just as a general audience sort of backlash, then they're obviously not the type of person who is ready for my book. um, it's a little easier for me to say that, I think, in terms of I don't tend to write a lot of like sexual scenes thus far. So, you know, it's a little more palatable, I guess, to certain people who might otherwise take issue when they're like, "Oh, my tiny mind can't just can't handle this right now," and that's a them problem, honestly. At the end of the day, um, and it's something I struggled with for a long time. Do I choose a pen name? Do I not? You know, this is a lot going on. And at the end of the day, I just had to kind of sit down and say, what is important to me? You know, do I want a pen name? Or do I want to take advantage of my honestly insanely cool last name? And I decided that that's what I wanted to do. And, you know, the block button exists for a reason. Some people will not agree with me on that. Some people will say, as an author, you need to be accessible. You need to be, you know, this, that, the third. You need to always open your ears for feedback. I will talk more about that in working with writing feedback tomorrow, because I have issue with that. But, you know, your health and your safety as an author is as important, if not more, than the work that you put out. So yeah, I just block people basically.
So yeah, now it's me. So for me, because I didn't, my first books were not queer because I was in a bad headspace and still in denial. But my book before was very like, I decided to go for the, so you know how they do queer baiting? I decided to do straight baiting. Hands up. From that moment on, as I was wondering what to write next, and I was researching my hometown's most beloved figure, my very homophobic hometown's most beloved figure, I realized girl was not straight. And so I decided to retell that story, making it as gay as possible. And because the straights can have it in YA, I made sure to include the lesbian sex in YA, which had to be toned down a bit. It was way more explicit than the final version. But I did not push back against my editor in there because, you know, it's YA. I was okay with it. But fortunately, I did not get pushback from my editor to make it less gay. I did get some vaguely sounding homophobic rejections. Like, we're just not sure this is gonna sell, and that's not homophobic, it's straight up lesbophobic. Because people think FF does not sell and that people don't want to read it. But more importantly, so be comfortable. If you're not comfortable putting that part of yourself out there, then don't. Like, your safety comes first, your mental health comes first, your environment. People forget that online is not the same thing as real life. Not every country or every family or every friend is welcoming. So don't judge people for being in the closet, maybe. And also, so I'll accept, like, I don't vibe with your writing, that's fine. But I draw the line at homophobic feedback and people saying I don't know Portuguese stuff because I'm from here. Damn it. So those two, I will block you. But everything else, it's fine. You're free to hate my book. Just don't be like, oh, lesbians, no. That's not okay.
Great. So Catherine, you're up. Or
did we start? We started with Catherine.
We started with Catherine. All right. So now we get to go to, we've got a reader question here that I am still kind of reading through. Let's see, this is, in an industry that limits queer voices, how do you deal with writing your own experience and the reader's desire to have their own identity reflected, which may not always happen as experiences within the same identity differ, and yours may even be similar to others already written, so to speak. Well, so what do you think readers within the very community can do to let every experience get its voice, even if they're not reflected? So I guess this is kind of touching back on the the idea that, you know, of one queer person of one queer identity cannot speak for everyone, and writing your experience, someone of your identity might pick that up and say, well, that doesn't reflect my experience, and how I guess you deal with that feedback.
I think they also mean in that this industry will often be like, we already have one autistic book or one gay book, so we don't need any more.
Also, yeah, that was also probably an aspect to that question.
Yeah, in an industry that limits queer voices.
Yeah. So, any thoughts, Mouse?
I am full of thoughts. Most of them unasked for all the time. So the first thing I want to bring up is I am not traditionally published, so I do not care about the industry. I don't want someone to be like, oh, we don't have space for all your gays. I'll make space for all my gays. So this doesn't tackle the problem of the issues within the industry. I realize that I'm avoiding doing that with my choices, but my goal was to put those books on the shelf so that someone can find them. Hopefully the pressure from the indie market for this material will show the traditional market that there's room for them. And that is the only way I can figure out how to help approach that problem. On the second part of the question, dealing with representation and the many, many facets of it, and how me writing something of my own experiences might not match up with someone else. The best I can do as an author is to put out content as thoughtfully as I'm able, and covering as much ground as I think I'm capable and willing to cover, and to encourage others to do the same. There will be experiences that I cannot or do not cover in my writing, either because it just doesn't work into the ideas I already have, or maybe it really is too far out of my realm. Maybe I just plain old do not have the experience or the drive or the understanding to do it. But someone else might, and I want to make room for them and to encourage them to do it.
Excellent thoughts. So, Jackie, do you have something to add?
Yeah, my two main things are, you're never going to be able to fit every single demographic into a book. I mean, if you are, you're George R.R. Martin, and like, good for you. But really, what you have to do if you want to keep like uplifting different identities is that you have to just keep writing books. Just gotta write until your little fingies fall off. And the other important aspect of that is that when your friend says, hey, there's a new queer book out that I heard of, and you say, oh, what is it? And they're like, oh, it's, you know, it's got an asexual main character, and you're like, I'm not asexual. Don't not read that book. Like, pick that book up. If you don't uplift your own community, and I'm talking specifically to other queer people here, but if you don't uplift your own community, then in my opinion, much like voting, you don't get to bitch when, I don't know if we're allowed to curse, I'm sorry. you don't get to complain later on that, oh, I'm not seeing myself reflected, like, because you are not putting anything into the community, so don't be surprised when you don't get anything out of it. If you hear of other books, if they don't sound like your jam, that's fine. But I think as a member or as an ally, if you hear of a book and that sounds even vaguely like your jam, and it's got queer characters in it that, you know, you're hearing of or people are telling you, then you have kind of a duty to try to give that book as much of a voice as possible, because a lot of them do come out of the indie market. The trilogy I mentioned previously got picked up by some small publisher, the Captive Prince trilogy, after it got big online. But again, that's word of mouth. You know, there's a lot of work by a lot of people, even just readers who get excited. So those are my main two things. Is just keep writing, and uplift people when you can, because that's how you see more of the content you want.
Absolutely. All right. So Deanna?
So they've already pretty much said what was necessary. You need to buy the books. That's how more get made. Because otherwise, if like the one gay book they picked is tanks, then you can be damn sure that the following people who try to publish their gay books are going to have a more difficult time, which is bullcrap because they don't do this with straight books, for instance. And so, and I get that not everyone has money to like be buying all the hardbacks with all the queer books. My trick for that is wait for the Kindle sales and then just go nuts. I buy a lot of books on ebook during Kindle sales that I never read and never intend to read, but they're like $1.99 or $0.99 and they're queer books. I'm like, have my money.
Even requesting books from your local library, or
yeah, your local library. Yeah.
You can ask, hey, can you get this book for the library? And they'll usually order the book and have it in the library. And then it can pass through word of mouth. Then whoever checks it out from then on forward will know the book and maybe spread the word to people who can go and buy it, afford it. So the possibilities are limitless for helping to support queer authors or queer stories, even if they're written by non-queer people.
Also heard that fan art can be a real impulsing factor behind people buying more books. So if you like a book, and you don't even need to be good at drawing, to be honest, just have fun. I guarantee it will make the author's day to see your stick figures of their cat. I guarantee you it will happen.
I can confirm. Have been given stick figures. Loved them. Loved them.
That's great fan art.
Also, that's a really great point from Catherine too. I used to work in a library, university library, and they will keep track. Like if that book gets checked out, you know, more than like 5 times in a year or something, they're like, oh, we better order the next one. Like we better get the next one, because libraries are always hungry to bring people in. So yeah, definitely ask your library like multiple times. Be like, do you have it yet? Do you have it yet? Do you have it yet? And they're like, we better order it.
Great. Well, we're getting a couple of more participant questions. So the next one is, I find that writing queer characters is more fun with a big cast that covers a lot of the rainbow. With writing queer characters, do you prefer to write ensemble casts or singular/dual protagonists? So I think, Jackie, you are up for this time.
I tend to write large ensemble rainbow people characters. Wow, words I write. Even if my cast is generally small, because for one thing, it is very true that for some reason, queer people just end up recognizing each other even before we know who and what we are. Pretty much anyone who I bothered to stay in contact with from like high school, who I was friends with, we're all queer at this point. We didn't know that in high school, but we all are. And also, I personally have a vested interest in kind of what I would call like the sleeper sexualities or the sleeper queers, in that like I want to write pansexuals and bisexuals and asexual. Like I want to write a lot of those who kind of get overlooked sometimes. And I also don't want anybody to be under any kind of mistaken belief that, oh, you know, this single confirmed character who's queer is definitely on the chopping block. Like, I never want that to be in someone's mind that, like, oh, I have to say my goodbyes now because it's halfway through. So anytime, I never, ever want that to be, you know, something that somebody's thinking. So I definitely prefer ensemble queer characters.
All right. Okay. So, Deanna?
I don't have like a preference. I just write what the book demands. And I did try writing dual POV for my debut. It did not work. So again, it was single POV. And because it's single POV, I could not have a big ensemble cast. Otherwise, it would get too big and confusing. I mean, there are a lot of characters. The core is not very big. And I did try to sneak in some asexual rap through dialogue, but it was mostly also because I did not have words for that because it's 13th century historical. And there wasn't even a word for gay, though I found out there was a word for lesbian and lesbianism from the medieval Moors, which was very fun to find out. So I just ended up doing a small cast that was just mostly gays and lesbians and maybe one hidden asexual. Sorry. It was the book. My fantasy book is full of chaotic pansexuals, though. My next one. Because it's fantasy and I get to.
Absolutely, you get to. So, Catherine.
A lot of my books, I like to focus on small casts, just from a storytelling perspective. And then my books generally tend to be romance, because that's just what I like to write. And so usually there's only one or two gay characters or queer characters of any stripe, but I try to include cultures that can welcome queer people of any kind, any persuasion, or anywhere under the umbrella. But I like to put just little things in a culture, like even just something like saying like all genders, as opposed to just, oh, both genders, we're wearing such and such, or, I try to not have limitations even in just the small things culturally, even if it's just a single sentence, but it heightens up that like acceptance level. So instead of ensemble casts, I usually have smaller characters, but I like to write multiple books, and hopefully we'll publish multiple books and therefore can include all sorts of different queer characters of different amounts in different books, even though the books themselves have small casts.
Excellent. So Mouse, you're up.
I tend to oscillate. Some of my books have small casts. Some of them have very, very large casts. And then I write very large casts, and I wonder why I do this to myself. But I enjoy both experiences. It's nice to write a large cast of people who can have various experiences in romance or not in romance regarding their orientation or their presentation. And it's nice to write smaller casts where I can go into more detail and more into those characters' specific experiences. Both are great. I do both a lot. Everything is excellent. Writing is good.
Excellent. So you have lots of different responses to this question. All right, so we've got lots of questions today. So the next one up is, if you had to write a popular trope, subgenre, or classic and make it queer, which one would you choose? So you are up first, Deanna.
I already kind of rewrote my hometown's legend. But if I had to rewrite like one of our classical books, I would do a gay retelling of the Lusiads. I've mentioned before that I like. So I don't like what we did when we found the maritime way to India, because we kickstarted global slavery, and that's a big no-no for me. But I want to rewrite the voyage when they get there, because we all know sailors were in on it. They were not celibate on those boats. And the Lusiads had like this chapter that was censored for high school reads, which was called The Island of Pleasures. And I still believe that all the sailors just got high on like sea wind and went to town on each other, and then woke up and were like, we'll tell them it was mermaids. Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. Excellent answer. That would be really interesting. So Catherine?
So we're talking about like classic novels or classic things that we'd be retelling?
Yeah, classics or a popular trope or subgenre.
Well, so I wrote a queer version of The Phantom of the Opera at one point. So that but it's tropes. Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to think about that question, I think.
That's
Nothing
all
else.
right. We can keep circling around, and if an idea comes to you at the end, that's cool too. So, Mouse.
So, to answer for a piece of media that I would retell as queer, please give me Road to El Dorado as an actual polyamorous romance. It's already 85% of the way there. Like, just finish that one off for all of us, please. And I love tropes. I specifically went in one of my books and pulled as many tropes as possible as I could for one of my characters deliberately so I can make them queer. So that is a thing that I have done, and it was excellent. But one I haven't tackled and am planning to tackle is enemies to lovers.
Oh, that's my favorite.
Well, have I got a
Favorite.
book for you?
Now you do.
We can universally blame Jackie for this. But yeah, that's my one piece of media and my one trope that I would go to town on for sure.
Absolutely. And that is a popular trope. That would probably make a popular book. So, so Jackie, anything that you would like to twist and make it queer?
Everything. I'm constantly doing this in my mind. For classic, The Hobbit, just give me Bag and Shield. It's all I ever wanted. Don't keep this from me. Trope, definitely like the princess who needs rescuing, which that will actually be, that's on my list. It's on my list. I've got part of it written. Just the princess who needs rescuing, but twisted and queer. And subgenre, something else that's actually also on my list, as not film noir, because that's not what I'm going for, but like the feeling of a film noir detective story, that's also something that's on my list. So that's what I gotta say, all those three things, because I want them so bad I'm gonna do them. So
That
here
would
we
be
are.
amazing if you did the film noir, because those are usually kind of misogynistic. So you can just
Yeah, I'm planning to fix a lot of things about detectives shortly. That might be my nano project. So.
Oh, that sounds fun. I am here for some queer detectives all day. So, Catherine, did you have anything that came to you as we were going along?
Yeah, you're talking about tropes, the enemies to lovers, but I think writing a middle grade or YA friends to lovers could be really nice, because that's sort of experiences that I wish I had when my sexuality was blossoming, and there were some situations that were kind of missed opportunities that I was scared to approach, and so to explore that through writing, I think would be kind of cathartic for me and maybe help some other people out.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's move on to the next attendee question, and this is a little bit more about writing queer characters when you aren't queer. And so the person says, aside from sensitivity readers and the research, they say, what I really mean is, how does someone get in the right headspace of writing queer characters when they haven't had that same experience? And I actually forgot who we started with last time. Was it Deanna?
it was me last time.
Okay, so I guess we can start with Catherine this time.
Okay, I think stepping into a queer headspace, or any headspace that's not your own, like, other than sensitivity readers, as the questioner asked, is just pull on your own experiences, whether it's through romantic relationships or friendships that you've had, or struggles that you've had, and apply those emotions that you have felt to whatever situation that you're writing that involves a queer character. Because queer characters are human characters. We're all human, essentially. So we go through very similar emotions and experiences that just may come from different sources or different inner struggles. Or, you know, happy things, of course. I keep saying struggles. But yeah, I mean, just pull on your own emotions. Think about what experiences you've had that gave you those emotions. And then think about your queer character or the story you're trying to tell, and infuse some of those emotions that you've had into, you know, adapt them for what your character is going through. I think that applies to all writing, for any character that doesn't personally reflect who you are in your own experiences.
Yeah, very good writing advice in general for writing something outside your experience. So your thoughts, Mouse?
A lot of what I'm going to say is going to second what Catherine said. Your queer character is, before anything else, a human and a character. So how do you vibe with your other characters? If you have a character who has a completely different life experience than you do, what do you do? How do you get into their mindset? How do you write their experiences? You're really talking about the same thing. A lot of my characters who are queer are many, many other things as well as queer. They are assassins or thieves or adventurers. They have other big parts of their lives that are sometimes as important, sometimes less important, sometimes more important than their orientation in any given scenario. Learn about your character, write them, practice them, love them. Any character that is loved will be written better and more thoroughly than any character that's not.
Yeah, absolutely true. All right. So your thoughts, Jackie?
My thoughts are branching and numerous. I would say the number one step to writing a queer character is deciding not only who they are in terms of their orientation and their favorite color and, you know, all those good things that you're supposed to know about a character regardless of their orientation, but also where are you putting them? Because for me, for my current work in progress is a pirate adventure novel. It's set in a completely different land from Earth. There's a lot that doesn't carry over. So if I wanted to, because it's my world, it's not, you know, historical fiction, I could say, oh, well, I'm just going to make this guy a girl instead, and we'll go from there. On the other hand, if you are not, you know, the sole creator of the world, if you are writing a detective noir set in 1945 or whatever you're doing, then a good deal of research is involved. A good deal of research should always be involved, in my opinion. But if you are going to set this character down in a world that does exist, or in a world that is, you know, tangential 1945 on Earth, but dinosaurs also, you have to work from the things that you can know and work your way out from there. If you are writing a gay story in 1945 on Earth, then you need to do some research and figure out, you know, what's legal, what's illegal, you know, how is homosexuality demonized at the time. There's a lot of real world knowledge that you have to acquire so that you understand where that character is coming from. And, you know, if your character doesn't care about the law, like, that's great. But if you write that the character doesn't care about the law and you're only writing that because you don't care enough to look up the law, you know, for or against it or whatever, your writing will feel shaky to the readers who are taking it in. And you have to decide what's important. Is it totally important that you get, you know, exact dates correct? Maybe. Is it totally important that you get, you know, the blend of the man's tweed suit correct? It's probably not gonna come up unless you make it, you know, necessary that it will. But knowing where they are and what challenges they're going to face because of the setting and because of other people, is a big facet to writing queer characters because that's how we exist today. You know, that's how a lot of us are talking about backlash and pen names and all those things. How we relate to the outside world is still a thing today. So you need to do your research. Sometimes it can be a one-to-one swap, but almost 100% of the time it cannot be.
Yeah, I would just add that if you're not a queer person and you're writing a queer romance book, I would urge you to please calm yourself down and leave it to us and don't take away our space from the shelves. But by all means, include side characters. If you're doing multiple POVs, do a queer character, but don't like do a focus story on being queer, because there are people out there who really need to write that book and they are queer themselves.
Yeah, a really a good point there, Deanna. So Catherine, do you have any thoughts?
I think did you start with me, or was that a different?
You start.
Did I start with you and I did it again?
My memory. Yeah, if I'm last.
Good, we've gone through everybody. So we've gone through everybody. I think we've got about 5 minutes left. So if we could do kind of a quick last question. So what do y'all think are some of the biggest needs in queer stories, some gaps in the market that we can all be writing into?
Oh my God, I can easily fill this out. Like happy endings. Happy endings. Give us happy endings. I'm a sucker for those. I'm sorry, not every queer story needs to end in tragic heartbreak. That's why part of why I love You Should See Me in the Crown so much. It's like a perfect fairy tale. And we need those too.
Definitely, we do need those. So just to keep myself steady, let's go on, move on to Catherine and circle back.
Me?
Yeah.
Well, I think for me personally, I'm bisexual, and to have more bisexual books written by bisexual people especially would be nice, because of course there are some, but it's sort of like in that weird middle ground where I can enjoy both gay and lesbian literature just perfectly fine. I can enjoy straight literature perfectly fine and enjoy all of it, but to have actual bisexual characters who are like me, who can, who do enjoy all of it, then and to not have the stereotype of we need all of it all the time. It tends to be that a lot of bisexual people are viewed as being either promiscuous, or we can't be satisfied to be in a partnership, a committed relationship with only one gender. Like we have to have both, and we'll never be happy if we don't. So to have some legit own voices, experiences of bisexual characters would be really good to see.
Or that you stop being bisexual after you settle down with one or
right. Yeah, exactly. It's like just in a committed relationship with a man right now does not mean that I am not still bisexual and still can't experience attraction to or so avoiding.
Right. Absolutely. So Matt.
Things that I think there need to be more of in the world. All of it. I don't really have. Everyone's brought up good niches so far. I'm sure Jackie will have good niches as well to mention. But all of it. The way queer identities intersect with other identities. Give me more of that. Everything, anything. There's room for all of it. We need it all.
Yes, generally.
It doesn't matter what, as long as it's gay. Or
Yeah.
queer, or
More to normalize everything.
Yeah.
Great.
So Jackie, thoughts?
I would say ultimately more careful representation, by which I mean more full of care. if you're straight and trying to write a queer character, I want you to go for it. I want you to go, 110%. I want you to do your research. I want you to talk to queer people. And when your book comes out, and there are mistakes because nobody's book comes out perfect, surprise, surprise. I'm going to mess up the thread count on that man's tweet suit. I know I am. But I want to sit there as a queer reader and go, I can tell that the person writing this wanted me to feel cared for and cared about, if that makes sense. Like, I want to sit there and read or watch media that, even if it's not 100% correct, if I can tell that where you're coming from, like your heart is in the right place with it, then I will forgive a lot. I mean, and that's most people. If you get, a fighting stance incorrect, or you get, a sailing term wrong, if somebody can tell that you're trying, and readers can always tell if you are trying or if you're not. Readers know. They're like 6-year-old children, and you're like, they're not going to get this. It's going to fly over their head if I just skip through this, if I don't do my research. No, they will absolutely pick it up. But that goes for the good things too. That goes for your heart and your soul and your care and your attentiveness. So more of that is my chief wish. And also more explicit representation. It's something I struggle with too, because I tend to write historical fiction or, adventure fantasy where it's got historical fiction vocabulary. But more people in books saying, yeah, no, I'm asexual, so your seductive wiles will not work on me. Or, I'm pansexual, so I find you attractive but morally repulsive. Like, it's just, I want more explicit representation, because that's a big part of it, is of the visibility. Even if somebody doesn't know what asexual is, now they know because they just read it in your book.
Also, I have to say, Jackie, that was brilliant. I'm attracted to you, but I find you morally repulsive. That needs to be a line.
I
That's
want
fascinating.
something
A shirt.
to me.
A shirt. I'm attracted to you, but I find you morally reprehensible.
That was a great line, and a great line to end on, because we are just about out of time, but this has been a moment of queer joy getting to know all of you. So yay, thank you for coming.
Thank you for
Hey,
having
thank
us.
you.
You.